Discover how an unexpected moment inspired the Billionaire CEO to transform 1,000 lives forever. Jack Turner stood at the glass wall of his penthouse, a $1,000,000 view of the city laid out before him like a vibrant digital landscape. Skyscrapers jutted into the sky, gleaming with opulence, but they did little to fill the hollow pit developing in his stomach. He had all the trappings of success, accolades, a renowned tech company, and a lifestyle almost everyone envied. Yet, a gnawing emptiness gnawed within him, a stark contrast to the vibrant Midwest town where he had grown up. Day after day, he navigated the polished corridors of his corporate empire, surrounded by corporate jargon, and yet, deep inside, he felt increasingly disconnected. Today would be another charity event, yet another checkmark on his clipboard of responsibilities, just one more obligation that felt more like a burden than a noble pursuit. As he drove to the community center, he feigned enthusiasm, trying to silence the creeping sense of dread that awaited him. He would be met, yet again, with the bitter reality of neglect and despair that existed outside his insulated world. Upon entering the building, he noticed the peeling paint and worn-out furniture that told a story of degradation rather than hope, reminding him of the life he had left behind. Then he met her, Maria. A single mother with striking eyes that seemed to reflect not just her struggle but an unyielding spirit. She worked multiple jobs, balancing the need to put food on the table with the dream of a better future for her children. Her joy, despite the visible weight of her responsibilities, sparked something in him that he'd long thought extinguished empathy. As she recounted heartbreaking tales of hardship, Jack felt with every syllable the chasm between their lives. He was a billionaire, a figure idolized by the masses, and yet the truth was that his heart was increasingly hard to access. Day after day, he had traded authenticity for profits, camaraderie for corporation. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the weeks that followed, Jack found himself tangled in a web of contradictions. The disdain from his corporate mentor over his newfound passion for community empowerment haunted him, forcing Jack to confront his priorities. Conversations with Maria altered his perspective, yet the weight of loyalty to his company still pressed heavily upon him. He felt as if he was standing on a cliff, with one side promising security while the other dangled the value of a meaningful existence just out of reach. Every interaction with his colleagues felt like a step back into a world that no longer resonated with his evolving views. The expectations felt suffocating. Could he redefine leadership in an environment that heralded wealth over humanity? Amid his ambivalence, Jack stumbled upon a shocking truth about his own family history. They had once thrived on community service and giving back. This revelation hit him like a freight train. The anxiety layered over his growing ambition now mixed with a desperate determination to rediscover the essence of his family's legacy. Yet as he attempted to forge a path towards transformation, he sensed skepticism swirling around him, tainting his vision with doubt. Contemplation filled his mind. Would he have the courage to align his actions with his beliefs, or would he succumb to the very emptiness he feared? The stakes escalated as he faced what could be the most pivotal moment of his life, squeezed between the cutthroat expectations of his colleagues and the heartfelt lessons imparted by Maria's unyielding resolve. Jack rebounded from the weighty dilemma, suffocated inside a world that revered currency over compassion. Now, with each decision looming larger than life, he felt an unbearable pressure. Would he stand firmly for a cause larger than himself or retreat back into the shadows of success? The clock was ticking, and he had to choose. What would it be? Jack's thoughts raced as he sat in the echoing silence of his office late into the evening. The city lights flickered outside, but the brightness inside him had dimmed significantly since meeting Maria. He felt as if he had descended into a labyrinth of conflicting emotions where each corridor led to a different version of himself, each begging for his attention. What did it mean to truly lead? Was it measured by accolades or by the impact one made on lives? The pull to redirect his life's mission was palpable, yet with every passing day, the security of his status loomed larger. Would pursuing meaningful change just cloud the vision he had cultivated over years of careful strategies and calculated decisions? Taking a breath, he opened his laptop, the glow illuminating his furrowed brow. As he skimmed through the latest industry reports, a shallow victory washed over him, numbers and charts that, once empowering, felt as hollow as a melody forgotten. Still, the specter of Maria lingered. Her unwavering resolve, her dream for a better life, haunted him. Could he leverage his resources to forge a bridge between his world and hers? It didn't take long for inspiration to seep through the cracks of self-doubt. The revelation of his family's dedication to community involvement tugged at a wellspring of passion he thought long buried. He could create programs that inspired, fostered talents, and empowered people to rise beyond their circumstances. Yet as his ambition began to crystallize into a project, another wave of hesitation crashed down on him. It wasn't just his mentor's scorn that loomed large, it was fear of failure. What if his attempts to reach out fell flat? What if instead of admiration, he received cynicism? Jack's fingers hovered above the keyboard as he wrestled with defiance and the fear of being mocked for stepping into uncharted territory. What emboldened his resolve was the knowledge that success could no longer be measured merely by personal gain. He suddenly recalled a smell of home-cooked meals that wafted through his childhood neighborhood, a reminder of evenings spent while his parents distributed food to those in need. The mission was older than him, and now it beckoned him back. As he crafted a mission statement for his new initiative, he embraced his connection to those roots. However, he was still caught in a web of expectations that whispered warnings of economic despair should he divert too far from the path laid out by his predecessors. Yet, he could no longer gloss over the discomfort that resided in his heart. Fear dwindled with every draft of his plan, and he finally decided to reach out to Maria. Her insights could be vital, she was the embodiment of the struggle he aimed to mitigate. He picked up his phone, hesitated, then pressed dial. "Jack. Is everything okay?" Her voice was warm and soothing, a stark contrast to the storm inside him. "I think I want to work on something that can really help," he confessed, each word carving a path to the truth he had long obscured. Today wasn't about delivering the perfect pitch, it was about a promise born from a place of altruism. Their conversations would evolve into something invaluable, a catalyst for the change he envisioned. But as he released the sigh he'd been holding, he felt another wave of tension rise. Engagement would eventually lead to pushback, doubtless. There would be those around him who would challenge his new resolve. Would they win or lose, and which would truly matter? The clock was ticking, he knew the decision was just the beginning. Each moment would become a test of integrity, a continuous interrogation of his character as he forged ahead. The energy of the city pulsed beneath him, both a siren call and a warning. Could he face his own demons, or would he succumb to the fear of the inevitable confrontation? Tomorrow would reveal more than he could imagine. The time had come to face what truly defined him. As dawn broke over the city, Jack felt an uncharacteristic urgency grip him. The day unfurled like a canvas, blank and intimidating, each hour an opportunity ready to be painted with action and distinction. No longer was he merely an observer in his own life, he was becoming the artist, one who would wield his brush with intent rather than fear. He closed his eyes momentarily, recalling Maria's words from their last call. "Jack, if you don't step up and share your vision, who will? You have the power to inspire change." They echoed in his mind as he poured a steady stream of coffee into his favorite mug. The warmth from the ceramic seeped into his palms, grounding him as uncertainty buzzed in the background like cicadas in summer. Jack took to his desk, no longer hesitating. He opened his laptop, the familiar glow now fueling a newfound determination. He began drafting an outline for his initiative. Each bullet point represented a fledgling thought, a delicate but strong conviction of what he could create. Community Empowerment Program became the title at the top, bleeding with potential. He envisioned workshops, mentorship, and resources designed to help individuals discover their strengths. It was an ambitious project, yet it was singularly focused on real lives, not just numerical success. Yet, as he typed, the shadows of doubt crept back in. Memories of his mentor's critical words surfaced. "Don't lose sight of what's real, Jack. Stay grounded in profit." He bit his lip, internalizing the conflict. Profit was the lifeblood of his profession, it had guaranteed his lifestyle, his status. But at what cost? The thought was a bitter pill to swallow. Jack leaned back, pressing his fingers to the bridge of his nose, kneading away the tension. He remembered a phrase his father used to recite when he felt lost: purpose is born from pain. Each challenge he faced, each self-inflicted wound through doubt seemed to shape not just his career, but his essence. It was time to confront the ghosts of his past while also carving a path toward his future. Drafting the program required more than just a statement of intent, it necessitated courage and an unwavering commitment to authenticity. He jumped from one document to another, collecting testimonials from those who had inspired him, finding strength in their struggles. Suddenly, a thought pierced through the cacophony of his self-doubt: he needed allies. He couldn't do this alone, he wouldn't survive the onslaught of criticism without a support system. As the plan took shape, he reached for his phone once more. Maria's presence as a collaborator became vital in that moment. She understood the pulse of the communities he wanted to impact. "Hi, Maria. I think we need to meet," he said when she answered, the authority in his voice surprising even him. "Let's start brainstorming how we can make this happen." He could envision her excitement, her innate understanding of growth and hope. Yet, what surfaced alongside that anticipation was fear, a stark reminder of the pushback they would face. The skepticism from his colleagues, maybe even outright hostility from those who viewed him as a flamboyant charlatan. With each moment that passed, the city outside his window transformed under the sun's embrace. The streets bustled with lives that drove home the importance of his decision. As Jack hung up, a surge of boldness coursed through him. He would face the waves of opposition, he would not yield. He had chosen to plant seeds of hope, despite the possibility of being trampled underfoot by naysayers. In that resolute choice lay the essence of true leadership. But what he didn't yet grasp was the scale of resistance lurking beneath a veneer of civility. The potential loss of reputation and respect waited, ready to challenge his resolve. Little did he know, an encounter was forthcoming that would shake his foundations and set a new course for everything he believed in. Would that course be toward redemption or disaster? As the sun climbed higher, casting ripples of golden light across the bustling streets below, Jack sat at his desk, a sense of determination radiating through him. With Maria meeting him later in the day, he felt the energy of possibility exhilaratingly intoxicating. Yet, the determination was tinged with a faint undercurrent of anxiety. He had not moved forward, but rather backward into an unsettling familiarity. The shadows of his doubts loomed larger than ever. It wasn't just a matter of crafting a program, he was attempting to shift the very core of how he approached his work and relationships. Despite his clarity of purpose, Jack could feel the gnarled roots of his past threatening to entwine themselves around him. He closed his laptop and stood, his mind racing. He needed a physical outlet to free himself from the mental confines that clouded his vision. The thought of running surged like a current in him, offering an immediate escape. He laced up his shoes, the fabric feeling both constraining and familiar, as if a forgotten part of himself was awakening with every tight pull of the laces. Outside, the world transformed into a vibrant blur as he embraced the rhythm of his heartbeat and the pulse of the concrete beneath his feet. Each mile drawn on the pavement was accompanied by thoughts swirling. What was it about fear that made it so stifling? Why did confronting his vision feel like standing before a chasm, with a perilous leap ahead? Jack's chest heaved, not just from the exertion but from the weight of unspoken attachments to his past. As he rounded a corner, the city landscape shifted into a park area that felt like a refuge. Pausing under a sprawling oak tree, he drew deep, restorative breaths, letting the fresh air fill his lungs. It was a bittersweet realization. The comfort of familiarity in his corporate world contrasted sharply with the unknown terrain of his aspirations. Was he truly ready to take this leap toward change, despite the risks? Memories flooded back times when he had muted his own voice for the sake of consensus. He remembered rejecting the new ideas of colleagues, afraid that divergence would lead to division. What if he had nurtured their proposals instead? Jack found himself standing at a precipice of revelation. Maybe it was not just change he sought in others but change within himself. Hours passed as he ran, until fatigue led him back home. Showering brought a clarity that lingered. He could no longer pretend that what lay ahead was merely a project. Instead, the program was a reflection of his evolution, an embodiment of personal and professional growth. Later, in the soft glow of his living room, he prepared for his meeting with Maria. He meticulously crafted bullet points on what he believed were key focal areas. It became increasingly evident that he needed to embrace vulnerability, a foundational stone for authentic connection. That realization ignited a sense of urgency, driving him to write down thoughts on transparency and shared challenges, inherent in learning from one another. When Maria arrived, her energy matched the intensity building in him. They went through each outline together, their conversation deepening in complexity and hope. But with each positive exchange, Jack felt the shadow of opposition drawing nearer, skepticism creeping back into his consciousness as though it was running commentary on their enthusiasm. As they dove deeper into the details, the doorbell chimed unexpectedly. The abrupt interruption made Jack's heart race. Who could that be, he wondered, a cascade of thoughts trailing behind him as he made his way to the door. Standing there was one of his former colleagues, Mark, a longtime skeptic of Jack's more altruistic ambitions. The unease in the air settled over him like a thick fog, leaving an uncomfortable itch of foreboding. Mark's eyes glinted with a blend of curiosity and protective skepticism as he spoke. "Jack, we need to talk." The weight of those words pulled him back to reality as the tension crackled, bringing forth the imminent confrontation he had anticipated. Would Mark challenge everything Jack was trying to stand for? Would he push Jack back into the shadows? In that moment, the lines between vision and opposition blurred, setting the stage for a conflict that would probe the depths of Jack's resolve. The stakes had never felt higher. Jack hesitated at the threshold, his heart thumping in his chest like a drum of impending conflict. The sight of Mark, rooted in the doorway with a knowing smirk, ignited a flicker of doubt that danced at the edges of his resolve. All the confidence he'd built throughout the day, a confidence grounded in self-awareness and ambition, felt fragile in the face of Mark's skeptical presence. "Jack," Mark said again, his tone laced with impatience, "you know this isn't a game we're playing. You can't just disregard the realities of corporate strategy." The words were sharp, cutting through Jack's anticipation for a constructive meeting with Maria. His instinct was to retreat, to gather the armor of his familiar excuses. But he didn't. The urge to challenge the negativity within him surged, fueled by the day's revelations. He swallowed hard, reminding himself that authenticity was key now, both in his professional endeavors and personal growth. "Why do you think this is a game?" Jack replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "I've been given a chance to make a real impact, and it's time I took it seriously." Mark's brows furrowed, disbelief etched across his features. "You think a couple of heartwarming initiatives will solve what a decade's worth of corporate greed? Those lofty ideals won't pay the bills or appease the stakeholders." Jack felt his composure begin to shake, the underpinning of self-doubt gnawing at him. There it was, the familiar, cynical mantra he had resigned himself to for too long. Yet, the growth he experienced during his run fought back against it. "The same old strategies haven't delivered results," Jack shot back, feeling a flicker of passion ignite within him. "If we want to lead in the market, we need innovation. And that means exploring unorthodox ideas, even if it puts us at risk." A tense silence filled the air as Mark regarded Jack with a blend of scrutiny and surprise. For a moment, he seemed to search for cracks in Jack's resolve. The slightest hint of vulnerability reached out to him, tugging at Mark's protective instincts. "You do what you think is best," Mark said eventually, his tone softening just a fraction. "But don't forget the consequences of every move you make." Jack's breath steadied, his mind racing with the weight of that sentiment. Consequences loomed like thunderclouds on the horizon of every decision. But he had spent too long entangled in fear, he couldn't afford to let it dictate his actions any longer. "I can't let fear control me anymore," he confessed, the truth hanging heavily between them. "Maybe you don't fear consequences," Mark replied, his voice low and contemplative. "Maybe you fear failure." That struck a nerve, and Jack felt the ground shift beneath him. It wasn't just about the program anymore. It was about his commitment to change both personally and professionally. The prospect of failure was paralyzing, yet the thought of not trying at all was unbearable. What's the alternative? Staying stagnant, backpedaling on progress for the sake of safety? I refuse to live like that, Jack asserted, his voice firm. Mark shrugged dismissively, attempting to dismiss Jack's fervor, but Jack was resolute. He had a vision now, one that went beyond profit margins and corporate strategies. However, with each attempt to assert himself, the specter of doubt loomed larger, casting shadows on his determination. Mark leaned against the doorframe, an inscrutable heartbeat resonating between them. I once knew someone who thought they could change things too, he remarked slowly. But sometimes, bringing change means confronting uncomfortable truths, and those truths can be brutal. The cryptic warning hung heavy in the air, ensnaring Jack's thoughts. He pushed past Mark, turning back toward the living room where Maria awaited. He had no choice but to explore the depths of his own ambition. He could feel the duel within him intensifying, a testament to growth tempered by fear. Let us finish what we started, Jack said, steeling himself. Whatever challenge lay ahead, he needed to embrace it fully. He would confront every aspect of himself, every demon, every twist of doubt. But as he walked into the room, ready to engage with Maria, he felt a ripple of foreboding and intuition that marked the beginning of a tumultuous journey he had yet to fully grasp. And so, he took a deep breath, aware that the confrontation with Mark was just the prelude. The struggle for change was about to unfold, an exploration of the deeper layers of himself and the resistance he would face in others. The moment loomed large. It wasn't just about a proposal anymore. It was about redefining his very purpose. Little did he know, the true battle awaited him, and it would test his resolve in ways he could never foresee. Maria sat on the couch, her laptop perched on her knees, illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. Her fingers danced across the keyboard with a rhythm that suggested she was deep in thought, yet as Jack stepped into the room, her attention shifted instantly to him. The moment marked a fork in the road, one where he could either continue to cower behind the hesitations of his past or step boldly into the light of his evolving vision. Jack, Maria greeted, her voice warm, a stark contrast to the tension he had just navigated with Mark. I'm glad you could make it. I've been going through the feedback on the proposals, and there are some interesting insights to discuss. Right, he replied, forcing a smile, his heart still racing from the confrontation. Sitting across from her felt both exhilarating and daunting. This was at the moment he had anticipated since the beginning of his career, but also one that unmasked layers of uncertainty beneath his surface. Before we dive in, though, Maria said, her gaze piercing, what prompted you to engage Mark like that? It's not like you. Her question hung in the air, and Jack wrestled with the instinct to brush it aside. But what was an obstacle now could be the fuel for his growth. He took a deep breath and leaned forward slightly, embracing the challenge. I realized if I keep letting people dictate my path, I'll never truly know what I'm capable of. I need to stand behind my beliefs and step into this role with genuine conviction. Maria studied him, a spark of recognition igniting behind her eyes. That's a significant mindset shift. Change, especially in a corporate environment, requires the courage to face opposition. The acknowledgement from her settled into him, affirming the validity of his struggles. The doubt began to recede, replaced by a burgeoning confidence. He could feel a fire igniting within, a signal that he was finally breaking free from the chains of complacency. Do you believe I can really make a difference? Jack asked, catching himself as he pressed forward. I mean, is our vision in alignment? Can we push for the kind of transformation this company needs? Maria's expression softened. It's not just about believing in your potential, Jack, it's about showing others they can believe in it too. It's vital that we connect our goals to people, employees, stakeholders, so they feel invested in this journey, not like passive witnesses. Jack nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. The realization struck him, transformation wasn't a solitary venture, it was inherently collective. He began to visualize the ways he could approach his initiatives, framing them as communal opportunities for engagement rather than mere directives from above. I want to redefine what success looks like, he declared, his voice gaining strength. Success is measured by inspired teams and fulfilled promises, not just metrics. What are you thinking? Maria leaned closer, her interest piqued. I'm considering ways to incorporate the voices of our employees into the decision-making process. We need to break down the hierarchy. Perhaps create small focus groups that contribute to the strategic direction of our initiatives. That will give them ownership and encourage innovation. That might work, Maria admitted thoughtfully. It will serve as a platform to empower their voices but expect pushback from upper management. They're not used to such openness. Jack felt a twinge of anxiety at her warning, but it was tempered by the clarity he began to feel. To encourage change, he needed to prepare to confront the opposition head-on, armed with empathy and a transparent approach. Then I'll have to be ready to face that challenge, he said resolutely, while a wave of determination surged through him. I might fear failure, but I can't let it silence me. I'll prepare a presentation that emphasizes how engaging employees can lead to tangible results, how inclusivity fosters creativity, and how risk-taking can ultimately bring us greater rewards. Maria's smile widened, and he caught a glimpse of the potential that lay ahead. Through their shared dialogue, she was not just his colleague but also a collaborator in this transformation. Yet just as the current of optimism began to flow more freely, a sudden thought pierced Jack's mind: how would he broker these changes when inertia ran deep within the corporate veins? As ideas spun in his head, he knew he was gearing up for a moment that could ultimately reshape not just his career, but lives beyond the walls of this company. What if the idea is more radical than we imagined? Maria posed, breaking into his thoughts, her tone teasing yet insistent. Jack's mind exploded with possibilities at the notion. This newfound notion simmered like an unlit flame, but what could it really entail? Just how far would it take him? As he pondered this revelation, the walls of certainty began to crack open. The journey of change had just begun, and Jack felt the weight of something tremendous about to unfold, a battle not just for strategic advantage, but for the essence of leadership itself. What lay ahead was not merely a task to tackle, but a reckoning that could redefine everything he believed about his role and the lives he could influence. Jack leaned back against the couch, the adrenaline of his earlier conversations coursing through him. He could feel the stakes rising around him, but with each pulse of excitement, the lingering shadow of self-doubt threatened to creep back in. Was he truly prepared for what lay ahead? He understood that his ideas would not resonate with everyone. Tensions would rise, and opinions would clash. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, shifting the uncertainty into a strategic focus. The concept of empowering employees to cultivate innovation was not just a theory, it had to manifest as a tangible plan. Jack envisioned meetings bursting with lively discussions, brainstorming where every voice carried weight. But how to initiate such radical openness within a rigid corporate framework? Okay, let us build it step by step, he murmured to himself, allowing the words to settle in as if to anchor his thoughts in reality. He realized that fear of failure, while instinctive, could not dictate his choices anymore. He would turn that fear into a roadmap, laying out what needed to happen before approaching management. Identify allies, he thought. I'll need to rally support from key players who see the value in this shift, starting with Maria. But even with a strategy forming in his mind, Jack couldn't ignore the deeper questions gnawing at him. What if those allies faltered? What if upper management completely rejected his ideas? Each potential setback weighed on him like a shadow lurking around a corner. The last thing he wanted was to expose himself as an imposter. He resolved to practice his presentation, rehearsing the words that would convey his vision. Would they respect his optimism, or would they dismiss it as mere naivete? The thought sent tremors through his resolve, but he quickly caged that anxiety. Each verbal duel he anticipated became less daunting as he visualized herself defending his vision, carefully crafting responses to potential objections. As Jack readied to plunge into his preparation, he caught Maria's knowing eyes one more time. What are you going to do if they dismiss you? She asked, her tone sobering as it cut through the atmosphere. I will refine my approach, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt inside. I will gather data showcasing the advantages of employee engagement backed by successful case studies. It will be hard to ignore the evidence. Good, Maria nodded, a flicker of approval dancing in her expression. But you also should consider how the decision-makers feel. What drives their actions? Don't just come at them with numbers, connect the dots to their motivations, their fears. Jack pondered her words. The nuances of corporate culture could not be ignored, nor could the emotional component involved in leadership. Familiarizing himself with the emotional landscape was crucial. It could delineate him from the single-minded approach often seen in corporate presentations. Right, he noted, the gears in his mind turning furiously. Understanding their motivations will give context to the concrete points I will share. I can make them feel involved in both the process and the outcome. The newfound perspective electrified Jack. He was no longer just conceptualizing a plan, he was preparing for a fight for recognition not just from management, but also for the souls of those employees who had long been stifled by the weight of bureaucracy. Let us hit the ground running, he declared, determination bubbling to the surface. With that, he began drafting a comprehensive outline, the keyboard clicking under his fingers punctuating the urgency he felt building within himself. Yet as he typed, a single troubling thought surfaced again, swirling around in his head. What if achieving this vision meant unveiling unanticipated resistance, bringing his deepest insecurities to light? The question settled ominously as he stopped typing, breathing deeply, realizing that he was on the precipice of far more than just career advancement. Unbeknownst to him, this journey would lead to an internal transformation that pushed him beyond his comfort zone, a journey interwoven with self-awareness and revelation. The moment had arrived, he was ready to step forward toward the unknown. But, as he glanced at the screen, a sudden chill washed over him. Had he truly prepared for what lay beyond the initial presentation? Could he withstand the storm that was sure to follow? The answers loomed just outside of reach, and with another breath, Jack recognized the truth of transformation. It was rarely about the leap, it was about having the courage to soar once you fell. What awaited him could redefine not just his career, but the very principles on which he had built his identity. He felt a tension in the air. A reckoning drew closer, and with it, the chance to confront not just his colleagues, but the very essence of himself. Jack spent the next few days immersed in research, poring over case studies that documented successful shifts in workplace culture and innovation. Documents flecked with highlighters and notepads filled with scrawled notes littered his desk, a physical manifestation of his mounting anxiety and determination. Each success story he read reinforced his vision, yet the gnawing doubts hovered like ants at a picnic, a constant reminder of the potential hazards that lay ahead. During one of those relentless nights, a close friend from college, Tom, unexpectedly reached out. They hadn't spoken in ages, but the connection felt immediate. Tom's venture into a burgeoning tech startup sparked Jack's curiosity. Over a quick video call, Tom shared his experience, adversities that forced him to adapt at every turn, but ultimately led to groundbreaking success fueled by open communication among the team. That's it, Jack exclaimed, the spark rekindling within him as Tom outlined how open conversations transformed their company's environment. Each success rooted deeply in vulnerability and honesty. This is exactly what I want to bring to my company, Jack replied energetically. But it feels like an uphill battle. Then make it a campaign, Tom suggested, his tone thoughtful. You need to create an emotional narrative, not only for your presentation but for the entire process. If you can't build the story of why this change matters, how will the exec see the value? Once the call ended, Jack sat in silence, digesting Tom's words. The concept struck him profoundly. He needed to craft an emotional arc that transcended the numbers and metrics. Reframing the narrative around shared experiences could unlock solidarity, bridging the divide between his colleagues and management. With renewed vigor, he shifted to crafting a compelling story that showcased the need for engagement through relatable anecdotes, both personal and professional. He envisioned a presentation that would not only outline the statistics but also evoke the emotional resonance of each employee's untapped potential. The keys to innovation weren't merely data points, they were voices yearning to be heard. However, with each passing moment of inspiration came a self-doubt that gripped him relentlessly. What if he failed to convey the message effectively? What if his passion was mistaken for desperation? As Jack rehearsed the story in front of his mirror, he noticed how his hands trembled slightly, revealing just how close to the surface his anxiety rested. In those moments of isolation, a thought seated itself in his mind. What if this journey was indeed less about the transformation of his workplace and more about his personal metamorphosis? The boardroom battles, the management dynamics, these were external arenas. But his real discovery lay within, confronting the fears that bound him. He could craft the perfect narrative, but would he himself believe in it during the presentation? The idea haunted him, an imposter standing at the cusp of what he needed to become. On the morning of the presentation, a chill gripped his stomach. Sunlight streamed through the window, but the warmth it offered couldn't thaw the ice coursing through his veins. As he stepped into the glass-walled meeting room, the usual faces of colleagues and management loomed ahead, signaling the storm he needed to weather. At that moment, he realized something crucial. It wasn't just about the story he had prepared or the success stats he'd reviewed, it was about confronting those whispers of inadequacy head-on. He approached the podium with no pretense of mastery, just a commitment to share his vision, one he hoped would galvanize not only management but also empower those silenced in the monochrome of the corporate world. But as he looked across the table, his voice steadied by resolve, a question surfaced unbidden. Was he truly ready to bear the vulnerabilities inherent in this transformation? The answer lay somewhere between the breath he took and the words he would say. And then, with a heart racing along the spectrum of anticipation and fear, Jack began, "Today, I'm not just here to push numbers. I'm here to share a vision that goes far beyond our metrics. This is about people, collaboration, and the soul of our company." The room hushed, eyes narrowing on him as the confrontation began, not just against potential resistance, but the very essence of self-doubt he had fought for so long. What ripples would this desire to connect initiate? Would they embrace his narrative or dismiss him once again? The silence weighed heavily in the air, pressing against Jack's chest as he scanned the expressions on the faces staring back at him. Some appeared skeptical, others curious, and a few seemed genuinely engaged. The initial shock of his opening words had settled, and now it was apparent that he couldn't afford to falter. He took a steadying breath, grounding himself and reminding himself of his purpose. "This," he continued, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands, "is about more than systems and processes. It's about recognizing the people behind those systems, their stories, their struggles, and their potential to propel this company forward if only we choose to listen and engage." A momentary flicker of doubt creased his brow as he noticed a look of indifference from Greg, the head of HR, known for his staunch adherence to rules and numbers. Jack felt a minor sting at the thought that Greg would dismiss his approach as fluff, but quickly pushed it aside. "Consider this. What if we reimagined our weekly meetings?" Jack pressed on, channeling the energy of his passion into the words he spoke. "What if, instead of simply reviewing KPIs, we dedicated a portion of that time to sharing success stories from across the teams? Stories of collaboration leading to innovation. Sharing our wins as a community, not just as departments. It could transform our culture and re-engage everyone." He could see small nods among some colleagues, a flicker of intrigue igniting behind their eyes. Jack sensed the unfolding potential, a shift that wasn't just about the company's future but also about their shared responsibilities and ambitions. It wasn't merely his vision, it was something they could build together. As he leaned into this idea, Jack poured forth the anecdotes he had gathered, stories that breathed humanity into the otherwise clinical metrics. He recounted tales of overlooked teamwork that had resulted in innovative projects, performances that hadn't been captured by spreadsheets. The responses from his colleagues were palpable, their body language shifting, some leaning in slightly as if hungry for this new narrative, the emotional connective tissue he craved. But then, inevitably, doubt crept back in like a shadow. What if the executives delivered an abrupt dismissal? What if they chose to ignore the desire for change that he had so fervently advocated for? This direct confrontation with his fears struck a nerve within him. In that moment, Jack faced the uncomfortable realization that perhaps he wasn't just challenging the status quo of his workplace, he was also contesting the very core of his worth. Each word became a layer stripped away from the protective armor he wore, revealing vulnerabilities that he had not previously been willing to acknowledge. "This isn't about watering down our performance," Jack almost pleaded, shifting the focus back to the data he felt was undercutting his presentation. "It's about enriching it, fostering an environment where each person feels valued and engaged. Engagement drives performance. I believe that the numbers support it." There, in the midst of his plea, he glimpsed a turn on the horizon. Helen, the company's chief financial officer, who usually remained aloof and procedural, nodded thoughtfully. Her reputation for being the heartless arbiter of company policy opened the door to an unexpected avenue of hope. Jack's heart raced as he pressed on, seizing that fleeting moment. With each paragraph of his evolving narrative, he uncovered another layer of the more profound truth he'd been avoiding. This campaign wasn't merely about the company. It was a mirror reflecting his own journey to overcome self-doubt, to claim his space and speak his truth. As he concluded, the anticipation in the boardroom thickened, each watcher suspended in an expectant hush. The silence held a promise, a reflection of the risks and rewards nestled within their shared ambition. So, what would it take to sustain this shifting tide? Would the others join him, or would he face the painful reality of standing alone against the very structures he wished to dismantle? Sensing the cliff he now teetered upon, Jack realized he had ignited something within himself, a flicker of resilience and dedication that surged in the wake of vulnerability. But the question loomed, was this transformation his alone to bear, or the beginning of a collective uprising against the stifling norms? With the lingering weight of silence, Jack moved deeper into the challenge of engagement, ready to confront both the board's response and his inner tumult, determined to push forward, and yet, the echoes of doubt threatened to resurface. Would he uncover the clarity to galvanize a change that could reshape their future, or would he wither beneath the weight of their judgment? The meeting concluded with a lengthened silence that felt as tangible as the glass walls surrounding them. Jack's heart raced with anticipation, every second amplifying the tension. The board members exchanged skeptical glances, and he fought the urge to fidget under their scrutiny. Had he effectively bridged the chasm between emotion and strategy? Would they truly embrace his vision for community and engagement? Jack, Greg finally spoke, breaking the stillness. The air held its breath. Your approach is unconventional. But you're right, we do need to find a way to reinvigorate our teams. Jack's pulse quickened as the room turned its attention toward Greg. The acknowledgement was an opening, however slight, and he deeply understood the weight it carried. However, Greg continued, the tone shifting slightly, we cannot sacrifice performance metrics. We need to ensure this initiative aligns with our bottom line. Even at that moment, Jack felt the familiar tug-of-war resuming within him. The realities of corporate life stood at odds with the ideals he sought to promote. He quickly gained his composure before responding. I completely agree, Jack asserted, bolstered by the initial acceptance. That's exactly why we must create a narrative that resonates with everyone, from entry-level employees to upper management. The aim is for their engagement to translate into higher productivity and innovation, ultimately enhancing profitability. He noticed a spark of interest on Helena's face, her expression reflective rather than dismissive. It was a small victory, one that encouraged him to continue shaping their discussion around the potential profitability of human-centric approaches to corporate structure. As soon as the meeting adjourned and colleagues exited, Jack felt the weight of his own ambition settle in, coupled with a sense of triumph. The initial steps began to crystallize into a movement, breaking the confines of the boardroom and cascading into the broader mission of the company he envisioned. He knew it was not merely the proposal that excited him, but the transformative potential they could unleash together. Days passed as he collaborated closely with Maria and engaged with key allies, gradually developing what they called the Inclusive Engagement Initiative. They organized focus groups, created feedback loops, and encouraged employees to share their stories highlighting their triumphs and aspirations. With each meeting and engagement session, Jack discovered something unexpected. He thrived in the collective energy flowing through the room as animated voices came alive in response to their shared mission. The effort bore fruit as employees expressed gratitude for the newfound acknowledgement of their contributions. Slowly, the climate shifted. Productivity metrics began to reflect the innovative spirit Jack had envisioned. Yet, amid the small successes, Jack understood that the tide of corporate culture was slow to turn. Challenges persisted, and barriers were raised by those still tethered to the old ways. Just when Jack felt momentum gathering, a critical challenge arose in the shape of a corporate merger that threatened to undermine the work they had achieved. News of the impending merger weighed heavily on Jack, casting doubt on his vision. Upper management emphasized the urgency of consolidating resources, which meant scaling back the engagement initiative that had begun to transform the workplace. Jack, this merger is a priority, Greg stated curtly in their next meeting, his demeanor returning to its clinical, numbers-focused self. The old fears loomed, whispering the insidious doubt that had haunted Jack before. But this time he would not bend. I understand the urgency, but I've seen firsthand the impact our initiative has had on our team dynamics. Let us not see our progress go to waste. The synergy we are building now enhances rather than weakens our edge during this transition, he countered, driven by an incipient sense of self that refused to let fear dictate his trajectory. Impressed by Jack's newfound assertiveness, Helen interjected. Perhaps we can incorporate aspects of engagement into this merger strategy. If we retain elements from the initiative, it could foster resilience among the teams, helping them adapt more smoothly. Although support was emerging from an unexpected ally, the confrontation with Mark's original skepticism lingered unervingly in the back of Jack's mind. They were on the cusp of something revolutionary, yet, even with some validation, resistance remained. Months passed, and Jack felt the steady evolution of the corporate environment. It resonated with the energy he had hoped to cultivate. Real lives, authentic voices, and stories transcended mere numbers. They represented the beating heart of his company, and each individual now possessed a unique stake in their collective success. As Jack walked through the office one day after work, he spotted Maria deep in conversation at a small table, engaged with a group of employees. Their laughter and animated discussion was a delightful harmony echoing throughout the floors. He couldn't help but smile. This was the change he envisioned, one that stirred pride deep within him. But amid this growth, a question remained: how could he channel this victory into a legacy that would extend beyond his tenure? It wouldn't be enough to simply convince the management of the utility of their program. He needed to ensure that it could endure beyond him. Jack approached Maria, a sense of urgency igniting within him. We need to set this initiative up for sustainability. We should consider forming a leadership group that includes representatives from all levels of the organization. That's a brilliant idea. Maria's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. It could serve as both a guiding force for continuous improvement and a platform for emerging leaders within the company. Over the next few weeks, they established the council, which gradually took on the mantle of accountability and ownership over their shared cultural progression. Jack reveled in the unforeseen outcome. The not only changed dynamic fueled his growth, but the very act of fostering collaboration validated him as a leader time and time again. With each meeting, he witnessed employees resonate not just under his guidance, but emerge as their own champions of engagement, embracing the evolution they had collectively birthed. The once daunting environment of his corporate life had blossomed into a vibrant landscape of possibilities. Jack realized that the barricades he once felt defined by had crumbled not just around his company, but within himself. Achievement was not bound in his title, rather, it flowed through the connections built with those who shared in the journey, a realization that with genuine commitment, anyone could enact change. And with this profound clarity, Jack could finally embrace his past, not merely learning from it, but using it as a foundation for his future. A true leader was forged within the crucible of adversity, one capable of rising to the occasion, discerning the differences between power and influence, and embracing each heartbeat of transformation within others. The city skyline glittered brightly in the evening sun as Jack marveled at his journey, the byproducts of a journey characterized not solely by success, but by purpose. He had proven to himself the undying power of collective growth, and for the first time, he felt at home within his own life, knowing he had co-created a legacy that would persist. Now, the world sprawled before him, beckoning the dawn of new challenges ripe for exploration. He walked away filled with confidence and determination, an adventurer on the brink of his next expedition, the journey defined by not which mountains he had to climb, but by the lives he had inspired along the way. What awaited him in the future remained a mystery, yet one thing was clear: he was ready to embrace it fully, the courage to face each new chapter unfurling before him like the horizon. Now, as you reflect on Jack's incredible journey through doubt to unwavering leadership and impact, remember your support means everything. You need to subscribe now to witness more stories of personal growth and transformation like Jack's. Leave a like now to strengthen our community and help others find inspiration through this narrative. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's evolution in the comments below. What lessons did you take away from his journey? And don't wait even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who also deserve a dose of motivation. Real change starts with all of us.